All right, so, we asked and you delivered, right? You sent in a ton of stuff about finding fulfilling work.
Tons.
Yeah, tons. And honestly, it was a lot. But going through it all, like one thing really stood out.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like this idea that it's not about finding that one perfect job, like it's just out there waiting for you.
Right, right.
But it's more about this journey, right, of understanding yourself and then figuring out how that fits into the work world.
Totally. It's way more about that.
So that's what we're diving into today, unpacking these principles that the source lays out and hopefully making that journey a little bit clearer.
That's the mission, for sure. And what I think you'll find really helpful here is it's not like a one-size-fits-all approach.
No, not at all.
It totally gets that, what fulfillment looks like can be different depending on where you are, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're just starting out, maybe you're mid-career, maybe even like thinking about what comes next. It's pretty versatile.
I like that. Okay, so principle number 1, deep self-awareness. This is like the foundation, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. You got to start with you.
Right. So where do we even begin with that?
Well, the source breaks it down into a few key areas. And I think the first one is the most fun.
Okay, lay it on me.
Your interests and curiosities. Basically, what grabs your attention? Even if it has nothing to do with work.
Yeah.
What are those things you get lost in? Even outside of the 9 to 5.
Like, what are you reading about in your free time or those activities you just lose track of time doing?
Exactly. And I think what's really interesting for you to consider here is that sometimes those passions, those things you just love, they can actually hint at skills or values that maybe you haven't even thought about consciously.
Oh, I like that. Give me an example.
Okay, let's say you are a huge sports fan, like seriously into following a particular sport. That could actually show you have a strategic mind, or that you love teamwork and competition,
I see where you're going with this.
So then you start thinking, okay, how could those things, those underlying, maybe hidden qualities, how could they translate into different jobs, like project management, or maybe even something like business development?
Right. It's not just about liking something for the sake of it. It's about what that liking reveals about you.
Exactly.
Okay. So beyond those interests and all that, then we get into those aptitudes and strengths, right? So what are we talking about here?
So these are the things you're naturally good at, the stuff you pick up quickly. Maybe people are always complimenting you on certain things. And here the source makes this distinction that I think is really important.
Okay, hit me.
It's the difference between hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills are, more technical stuff, like if you're good at coding or data analysis, anything like that.
All right, very specific things.
And then there are those soft skills, which are honestly sometimes way harder to learn.
Yeah, they can be.
Yeah, they really can. Things like how you communicate with people. If you're really good at explaining things or understanding where someone else is coming from.
Empathy, all that good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really easy, especially when you're like looking at job postings and stuff, to get hung up on those hard skills.
Yeah.
Right? They're right there in the listing.
Oh, totally.
But in my experience, it's actually those soft skills that end up making a huge difference in the long run.
In terms of actually being good at your job, but also just liking it.
Absolutely. It's your ability to build relationships with your coworkers or clients,
Yeah.
Being able to lead a team or navigate tricky situations. That stuff is so valuable. And honestly, it can really impact how fulfilled you feel.
Okay, I'm tracking. So next up on this self-awareness train we have.
Core values.
Core values. I feel like we hear this a lot, but what does it actually mean? Like, practically speaking.
So I like to think of it as, those fundamental principles, not just for your work, but for your life.
So big picture stuff.
Yeah, really big picture. Like, do you really value having a lot of independence in your work, like being able to make decisions on your own? Or is it more important for you to be part of a team and collaborate? See what I mean?
Right, like what environment are you going to thrive in?
Exactly. Or maybe it's something like needing stability and security versus, wanting to be creative and innovative. These are the things that once you know them, they can really help you filter out opportunities.
You mean like a gut check?
Yeah, totally. Because if a job or even just the culture of a company clashes with something you deeply value, chances are you're not going to be happy.
Even if it sounds good on paper or the money's amazing?
Exactly. You could be making bank, but if it goes against like who you are at your core, it's going to lead to trouble.
So knowing your non-negotiables, huge.
Huge, yeah. Really key for making good choices career-wise.
So to wrap up this whole self-awareness thing, there's one more piece.
Preferred work style. This is all about the kind of environment that you really thrive in.
You mean like, are you a solo worker or a team player?
Right. Or do you need a very structured, predictable kind of work day? Or do you like things to be flexible and you can, kind of roll with the punches?
I feel like this is a big one for people.
It's huge. And it can get down to even, do you need someone constantly telling you you're doing a good job? Or are you more internally motivated? Understanding that stuff can make such a difference in your day-to-day experience.
Right, because like if you thrive in a really collaborative, buzzing environment, well, working from home all the time is probably going to be a nightmare for you.
Total nightmare. But for someone else, that could be a dream.
Exactly.
And on the flip side, someone who loves quiet and focus, you throw them into an open plan office, they're going to get drained,
Absolutely.
So knowing your preferences, it's really about giving yourself a better shot at finding a work environment where you can really do your best,
Right, where you're set up for success. Okay, so we've been talking pretty abstractly, but the source actually gives some really detailed examples to help illustrate all of this.
Oh, yeah. They're good ones.
So we've got Maria. She's young, loves art history. She's naturally organized and a good leader, values creativity and collaboration, but hates rigid schedules.
Classic millennial.
Right. So the traditional path for her, you might think, oh, museum curator.
Right, but is that really the best fit?
Exactly. But because she's done all this self-awareness work, she can see other possibilities. Maybe she works in arts administration for a nonprofit where she can have that flexibility.
Right, or managing creative projects, working with a team.
I like that. It's so much broader.
And I think what's so insightful here is that because Maria knows herself so well, she's not limiting herself to just that one path,
Right.
Which, let's be honest, is probably super competitive.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But she's thinking bigger. She's seeing those transferable skills, those core values, and realizing they could work in so many different roles within the arts. That's a game changer.
Yeah, it gives her options.
Options and a much better chance of finding work that's truly fulfilling for her.
Exactly. Okay, so then we've got David. He's an engineer, mid-career, feeling that little bit of restlessness that I think we all get sometimes.
Been there.
Right. And he realizes what he really values is mentoring, helping other people grow. And he likes smaller teams where he can see the impact he's having.
Okay, so what does he do with that?
So instead of just staying put, right, he starts looking at team lead positions in smaller tech companies.
Interesting.
Yeah, or he even thinks about maybe technical training roles or teaching at a vocational school.
Wow, that's a pretty big shift.
It is. But it all comes back to him really understanding what motivates him, what matters to him.
I love that. And I think it shows you don't always have to do a complete 180 to find fulfillment.
No, not at all.
It can be about looking at your skills and your experience, but just shifting the focus, aligning it with your values.
He's still an engineer, but in a different way.
Exactly, in a way that's probably more meaningful to him now.
Okay, last example. We've got Sarah. She's nearing retirement, has this super sharp analytical mind from her career, but she's done with the corporate grind.
She's paid her dues.
For sure. Now her interests are shifting towards her local community, and she wants part-time work, more flexibility.
I can relate to that.
So instead of taking on more high-powered board positions, which she used to do, she's thinking about being a treasurer for a local charity or maybe running financial literacy workshops, still using her analytical skills, but in a totally different way.
It's a beautiful example of how self-awareness can lead you to an encore career, as they say.
Right, where you can use all that expertise you've built up, but on your own terms.
And probably with a lot more emphasis on work-life balance.
For sure. Okay, so you figured yourself out. What's next?
Well, principle number 2 is all about exploring.
Exploring what?
Exploring broadly and curiously. Basically, it's saying don't limit yourself. Go beyond those, familiar job titles.
Don't just do what your parents expect you to do, all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But really do your research. Look into different industries, different roles, and try to understand, what the day-to-day reality actually is,
Don't just read the glossy job description.
Right, because sometimes it's totally different. And I think this is where curiosity really comes in handy.
But you mean being open to possibilities you hadn't even considered before?
Exactly. Because so many people, they get stuck, They think they know what's out there, but they haven't even scratched the surface.
So broad exploration helps you break out of those assumptions.
That's it. And again, we've got some great examples here, like Ahmed. So everyone's telling him, you're good at math, you should be an engineer.
Oh, I know that story.
Right, happens all the time.
Yeah.
But Ahmed's smart. He's like, okay, maybe, but I'm going to explore other stuff too.
He doesn't just take it at face value.
Nope. He looks into data science, finance, actuarial science, all sorts of things. And he's using LinkedIn, reaching out to people, doing informational interviews.
Informational interviews, that's a great point.
So valuable,
Yeah.
because you can go beyond that carefully curated job description.
Right, get the real scoop.
Exactly. Find out what the challenges are, what the rewards are, what you're actually doing all day. And it's a really low-pressure way to gather information.
Plus, you're building your network at the same time.
Networking, always a plus.
Okay, then we have Lisa. She wants to work in healthcare, but medical school is a bit daunting.
I can see why.
But she doesn't give up. She starts looking into other possibilities.
Like what?
Physician assistant, occupational therapist, hospital administrator, all those other roles within healthcare.
Not just limited to doctor. I like it.
And she doesn't just read about them. She volunteers. She talks to people who are actually doing these jobs.
That's such a good point. Volunteering, even just shadowing someone, it can give you so much real-world exposure, right?
Way more than just reading about it online.
Right. It's about immersing yourself, even if it's just for a day or two, and seeing if it's actually a good fit for you.
Love it. Okay, so what about people who are just starting this whole exploration thing? Any advice?
Absolutely. The source mentions a ton of great resources like online webinars and courses. They can be amazing. Also, don't underestimate company websites.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of them have these like careers sections, and you can find out a lot about different roles.
Oh, the more you know.
Right. And trade publications, they're specific to different fields, but they can give you a good sense of what's going on in that industry.
And of course, we can't forget those good old job boards.
Indeed, Glassdoor, all that. Not necessarily to apply right away, but just to see what kinds of jobs are out there, what skills they're looking for.
Just getting a sense of the landscape.
Exactly. You're like a detective gathering information.
I like that analogy. Okay, so you've done the self-awareness work, you've explored, now what?
Now it's all about alignment.
Alignment with what?
Alignment with your strengths. And this is principle number 3. It's about, first of all, figuring out where you naturally excel, where you have an advantage.
Play to your strengths, right?
Absolutely. But it's also about recognizing that no matter what you do, there will always be skills you need to learn, to develop.
Right. You're never done learning.
Never. It's about finding that balance. Use what you're good at, but also be willing to put in the effort to learn new things.
That's where the growth happens.
Exactly. And it's funny because sometimes those things you're naturally good at, they can make work feel less like work,
Well, absolutely. If it comes easily, it's enjoyable.
Totally. But then there's that other stuff, the stuff you need to learn, and that takes effort.
But it's worth it.
It so is. So the source gives this example of Chen. He's got this natural empathy, which is amazing for UX research because he can really understand users.
Right. You can get in their heads.
Exactly. But empathy alone isn't enough. He still needs to learn the technical stuff, like how to design good surveys, how to analyze data. That's crucial.
So his empathy is the foundation, but he builds on it with these other skills.
And it's that combo, natural talent plus learned expertise that makes him really good at his job.
I'm with you. Okay, next example.
Okay, we've got Maya. She's super passionate about sustainable architecture. Like, that's her thing.
So it aligns with her purpose. We'll talk more about that later. But
yeah, we will. But the thing is, she admits she's not naturally gifted when it comes to the technical side of architecture.
like drafting and all that.
Yeah, all that stuff. But because she's so driven by that goal, that purpose of creating sustainable buildings, she's willing to put in the work.
She buckles down and learns CAD, all the technical drawing stuff.
Exactly. Which, let's be honest, can be pretty tough to learn.
Oh, for sure. But she's got that motivation.
And that's what gets her through it. That internal drive is so powerful when you have to learn something really challenging.
So it's not just about natural talent. Motivation matters too.
Oh, it matters a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, last example for this principle.
Hit me.
We've got Sam. Super outgoing, personal guy. So everyone tells him, you should go into sales.
Makes sense on the surface.
Right? But the reality is, Sam hates the pressure of sales targets.
Yeah.
And he's just not interested in learning all those negotiation tactics.
Doesn't light his fire?
Nope. So the source suggests maybe he'd be better suited for something like account management or community relations.
Where he can still use that natural ability to connect with people.
Right. But the skills he needs to learn are more aligned with what he actually enjoys.
That makes so much sense. It's about recognizing when something's not a good fit, even if it seems like it should be.
Totally. Because sometimes, we see a trait like being outgoing and we think, oh, that means you're perfect for this job.
Right. But we don't always think about the deeper requirements.
Exactly. And that's where things can go wrong. because you might be good at the surface level stuff.
But if you don't have that deeper motivation to learn the rest, you're going to burn out.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Okay, so moving on to principle number 4, this one's all about meaning, right?
Yes, finding purpose and meaning in your work. This is where it gets really good.
So what are we talking about here?
It's about connecting your work to something bigger than just the paycheck, Maybe it's the mission of the organization you work for.
Like, are they doing good in the world?
Exactly. Or maybe it's about the direct impact your work has on people.
Like, are you helping someone in a tangible way?
Yeah, that can be super motivating. Or it could even be about aligning your work with your own values, even if it's something small.
So it's about finding that internal motivation, that thing that makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning.
That's it. It's about knowing that your work matters.
On some level, yeah.
And that can make such a difference because it's not just a job anymore, it's something more.
It's contributing to something bigger than yourself.
And that can be really powerful. So let's look at some examples. We've got Wei. She takes a job that pays less than she could be making, somewhere else.
Why would she do that?
Because she's working for this clean water nonprofit. And that mission, that idea of environmental stewardship and helping people around the world, it really speaks to her.
So the purpose outweighs the paycheck.
Exactly. Then we have Ben, the physical therapist. He finds meaning in helping his patients recover from injuries.
Seeing them regain their mobility, all that.
Yeah, that direct impact is huge for him. And then there's Chloe, the data scientist. She's motivated by the intellectual challenge of solving these complex data problems.
It's like a puzzle for her.
Right. And she loves it. So you can see purpose can look very different for different people.
It's not one size fits all.
Not at all. And I think it's important to remember purpose doesn't have to be about saving the world,
No, not necessarily.
It can be about helping one person at a time or contributing to your team or even just mastering a skill.
As long as it matters to you, that's what matters.
Exactly. Okay. Ready for principle number 5?
Hit me.
This one is all about learning and growth.
I feel like we've touched on that a little bit.
We have. But this is specifically about embracing continuous learning and growth throughout your career.
Okay, so we're talking long-term now.
Long-term, yep. And the source emphasizes that, industries are always changing. Technology is evolving. The world is changing. So if you want to stay relevant, you have to stay curious.
You got to be willing to learn new things.
Absolutely. And this ties into what's called a growth mindset, which is basically, believing that you can always learn and grow no matter what.
So you don't get discouraged when you hit a roadblock?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You see challenges as opportunities to learn and improve, which in today's world is so important.
Because if you don't keep learning, you get left behind.
You really do. So the source gives this great example of a graphic designer. She realizes that print media is declining.
Yeah, everyone's going digital.
Exactly. So she decides to learn UI/UX design and web development.
She's adapting to the changes.
That's it. Or we have this analyst who actively asks for feedback on their reports.
Not just to get praise, but to actually improve.
Exactly. They want to know what they can do better. And then there's the financial advisor who's always going to conferences, reading journals, doing continuing education courses.
Wow, they're really staying on top of things.
They are. And that's the point. Continuous learning can take so many forms.
It doesn't have to be formal education.
Nope. You could be reading articles, taking online courses, talking to experts, all sorts of things.
Just as long as you're constantly learning and growing.
Exactly. Okay, principle number 6. This one's interesting.
Okay, what is it?
It's about how you actually do your work. They call it practicing engaged and mindful work.
So it's not just about what you do, it's about how you do it.
You got it. It's about being focused, being present when you're working, taking pride in what you produce.
Like almost a sense of craftsmanship.
I love that. It's
Right.
about doing things well, being reliable, and taking ownership of your work.
Really being responsible for the outcome.
Exactly. And I think this can make such a difference in terms of fulfillment because you're not just going through the motions, you're really engaged.
And that can be really satisfying no matter what you're actually doing.
Absolutely. So the source gives the example of a software developer. They're laser focused on solving this really complex bug in their code.
I can imagine that takes a lot of concentration.
Oh, for sure. Then there's the chef who is meticulous about preparing and plating their food.
Making it look beautiful, all that.
Exactly. And then the project manager who's always on top of things, communicating clearly, taking responsibility when things go wrong.
These are all very different jobs, but
And
there's that common thread.
Of being present, being intentional, caring about the quality of their work.
Okay, so I feel like this next one is something everyone struggles with.
Probably. It's principle number 7, which is about work-life balance.
That's the one. Yeah.
It's about integrating your work with the rest of your life in a holistic way.
So it's not just about work, work, work.
Right, because you're a whole person with a life outside of work.
And that matters.
It matters a lot. So it's about finding a balance between work and family, your health, your hobbies.
And setting boundaries.
Boundaries are crucial because if you don't, work can take over.
And then you end up burnt out and miserable.
Nobody wants that. So let's look at some examples. We have Priya, who prioritizes her family.
Okay, how does she do that?
She looks for jobs with predictable hours so she can be there for her kids.
And not traveling all the time, I bet.
Exactly. Then we have Raj, who recognizes that he's getting burned out.
So he takes action.
He does. He sets firm boundaries around his work hours so he can take care of himself.
Protect his mental and physical health.
Exactly.
Ugh.
And finally, we have Simone. She's got this passion for music, but she also needs to pay the bills.
The struggle is real.
It is. So she has a stable day job that allows her to pursue her music in her free time.
So it's not always about finding your dream job right away.
Sometimes it's about finding a job that supports your dreams.
That's a good way to put it. Okay, we're on the last principle now, right?
We are. And this one's super important in today's world.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It's all about flexibility and adaptability.
So being able to roll with the punches.
That's a big part of it. The source makes the point that, that old idea of having one job for your entire life, it's pretty much gone.
Yeah, the world's too fast-paced for that.
Exactly. So it's crucial to have skills that could be used in different roles, different industries.
Transferable skills, they're gold.
They really are. And it's also about being open to change, not seeing career shifts as failures.
But as opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. So, for example, we have this journalist. They see that print media is on the decline, so they learn about content marketing and SEO.
They're keeping their skills relevant.
That's it. Then we have Mark. His spouse gets a job in a different city, so he has to adapt to a whole new job market.
Oof, that's tough.
It can be, but he focuses on his transferable skills, and he finds new opportunities in that new city.
He makes it work.
He does. And finally, there's Fatima. She decides to make a big change. Goes from corporate finance to sustainable agriculture.
Wow, that's a big leap.
It is. But she's passionate about it, so she volunteers, she learns everything she can, and she makes the transition.
Love it. So these examples show that it's not always about starting from scratch.
Sometimes it's about taking what you already know and applying it in new ways.
Being creative, being resourceful.
Exactly. Okay, so we've gone through all 8 principles. Now what?
Well, this is where the rubber meets the road, right?
I like that.
The source calls it the iterative process.
Yes. That's how you actually put all of this into practice.
So it's not like you do this once and you're done. It's a cycle.
It's a cycle, a continuous loop.
You're constantly self-reflecting, exploring different options, taking action, learning from those experiences.
It's about aligning your choices with what you learn about yourself, integrating your work into your life, and being willing to adapt.
It's a journey, not a destination.
I love that. It's so true. And the source gives a great example of this with a teacher who ends up moving into curriculum design.
Okay, so how does that play out?
So they start out teaching in the classroom, they're gaining experience, learning new skills. But over time, they realize their interests are changing.
They're evolving.
Exactly. They're more interested in creating educational materials, developing learning programs. So they explore those roles, maybe get some more training.
And they make the switch.
They do. And it's not a straight line, Right. It's all about learning, adapting, figuring things out as they go.
And that's the key takeaway here, right? It's not about finding that one perfect job and sticking with it forever.
It's about being open to change, to growth, to new possibilities. And that's what makes it exciting.
So if we could just sum it all up for our listeners, what would you say are the biggest takeaways here?
I would say, first of all, ditch that idea of the dream job. It's a myth.
A myth, yeah.
It's not helpful. Instead, focus on those core principles we've talked about. Cultivating self-awareness, exploring broadly, aligning with your strength.
Seeking purpose, continuous learning, all of that.
Exactly. And remember, these principles, they're all connected.
They work together.
They do. So don't think of them as separate things. They all feed into each other.
This has been so helpful. I feel like it really reframes the whole idea of finding fulfilling work.
That's what we were going for.
So as you're listening to this, I want you to think about Which of these principles really speaks to you right now?
Yeah, which one resonates?
And then what's one small step you can take today or this week to explore that principle further? Maybe it's writing down some things you enjoy doing or reaching out to someone for an informational interview.
Maybe it's thinking back to a time when one of these principles guided you, even if you didn't realize it at the time.
Yeah, what did you learn from that experience? How can you apply it moving forward?
Love that. Because ultimately, it's about taking these ideas and making them your own.
It's your journey, your path.
Exactly. So keep reflecting on these principles, keep experimenting, and keep learning. That's the key.
Couldn't said it better myself. Thanks so much for diving deep with us today. We hope this helps you create a more fulfilling work life.
That's what it's all about.
See you next time.
This is DigitView.